again this week. I'm your host, James Lapine, and I am joined today by two of my friends and coworkers, Faith Brown and Haley Bowden. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi.
How are y'all doing?
Good. Happy to be here.
Ready to podcast?
Ready to
I think
podcast.
so.
We didn't text each other about what we're wearing. That was just happenstance.
happened.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But whatever, we'll go with it. If you're watching live, go ahead and let us know in the comments that you're here. Jordan Schneider will be there with you in the comments, taking your questions as we go. So if there's anything that you let us know there, and we'll get to those at the end of this podcast. Here in a bit, we're going to be talking about how to best care for singles during this time. And so I'm really excited for what y'all are going to be talking about, the perspective that you're bringing. I think that there are things that we'll talk about today that don't just matter for this next 2 months or however long we're in this, but are things that we can take and use even after this is over. So I'm excited to talk about that here in a little bit. But before we get into that, I want to give a couple shout outs. So this week on the show, we're supporting our very own Cameron Cummings. He's been a partner at the Paradox Church for a long time, and he owns and operates a Smoothie King in Benbrook. And so Heather Thompson, on her way into work, stopped and got us all smoothies. And so Cameron, thank you for the nutrition and energy that you provided for our staff today. My smoothie is called Immune Booster Berry Blast, I think. So thank you for boosting my immune system during this time. Also, shout out to Tuk Tuk, a purveyor of delicious Thai food. We had it for lunch yesterday, and their pad Thai is amazing. I just have one request. When I eat pad Thai, I want to sweat, and I want my nose to run. And I ordered it as spicy as it could be, and I'm telling you, it was not spicy at all. It was not spicy at all. So Tuk Tuk, I know you're watching. I need some more red chili flakes. I need some more chili oil. Spice that thing up. Great job otherwise. And then final shout out, you'll see it here on our table, Vaquero Coffee. They've been powering our Sunday live stream gatherings. They're in the heart of downtown Fort Worth. So thank you for making great coffee.
Yes.
And for
Love
serving us
y'all.
during this time. Hit us up in the comments. Who are you supporting this week? What restaurants, coffee shops, and other local businesses are you ordering from? Once again, this is an opportunity to love our city as well as we can during this time. So when you order, be sure to let the employees know how much you appreciate them. Tip them big, love them big. Let's be the hands and feet of Jesus for our local businesses during this time. Okay, that gets us to the portion of the show where I tell you what we're going to talk about. So today on the show, I'm going to share a couple quick updates about Sundays and our programming schedule. Then I want to share a Tim Eller.
Tim Eller.
Y'all know Tim Eller.
Everybody
Yeah.
knows him, I think.
He's the best.
He's famous.
Tim Keller article that just went live on the Gospel Coalition website. Jordan is going to link that in the comments for us so you can follow along and read that with me if you want. And then we'll talk about caring for singles, and then we will close with questions. So here we go. Update on Sundays. First of all, we are, of course, live streaming this Sunday at 10 a.m. This Sunday is Palm Sunday, and so next week is Holy Week. Joel's got some information that will be coming to you about how city groups can host a virtual Maundy Thursday meal. So if you're not familiar with that, it's basically just a way to acknowledge and practice the Last Supper that Jesus had with his disciples. I've seen it done in some really cool ways where people wash each other's feet and care for each other. Obviously, we won't be able to do that this year because of our virtual meetings. But we have some ideas for how you can do a Maundy Thursday meal. Anyway, for the whole church, I want to address this. We made a decision, I think, on Monday that we are just going to do one live stream gathering for both Good Friday and Easter. There are a lot of churches right now that are doing multiple restreams, and we're not knocking that. You know, their church is doing Saturday services and multiple services on Sunday, and that's great. That may be a good way to get that service out to more people who need it during this time. But we decided that just with our theme of staying united in Christ even while we're apart, to do one service for Good Friday at 7 p.m. and one on Easter Sunday at 10 a.m. and say, everybody get on those actually live streamed. Like this is not a replay. This is, we are doing this live together. And so Good Friday will be at 7 p.m. Easter will be at 10 a.m. And that's Friday, April the 10th and Sunday, April the 12th. So please make an effort to be there for that live gathering. We really miss you guys, and we want to be with you guys in person. And this is the next best thing. So let's do it all together. We've also got a couple of surprises coming your way next week, some creative ideas for engaging your neighbors, and just some other things that I'm not allowed to mention yet, but be looking for those. Last thing quickly, we rolled out this streaming guide last week, and on Friday night we did Date Night with Paradox, restreaming a sermon from the Wild at Heart series. Then on Monday at noon we restreamed a sermon from Who Needs God, but Facebook apparently didn't like the intro for that sermon series. Jordan said there was something with the intro to that sermon where they kicked us off of their platform, and so that one didn't happen. But yesterday we streamed a sermon from the First Peter series at noon. So our idea was to give you good biblical teaching during this time that you could watch during your lunch breaks, that you could do as a date night. But we only want to do that if that's what serves y'all. And so let us know in the comments or send me an email, james@theparadoxchurch.com. Let us know if you like those restreams. If you don't like them, no worries. We'll just divert that energy to something else. And so let us know if those restreams are serving y'all. Okay, now I'm going to share about this article from the patron saint of Acts 29 churches, Tim Eller, as I said earlier, Tim Keller.
Tim Eller.
Again, it's linked up in the comments if you want to follow along with us. But I read this yesterday, and it really it fired me up and encouraged me, gave me hope. And so the title of the article is "The Fright of Death: How Conscience Makes Cowards of Us All." And I don't know if he was planning to write this article before everything that's developed with COVID-19, but it's certainly a timely article. Christians are meant to dwell on sin and mortality during the Lenten season. And so we were already doing that, and now the whole world is joining us. People are asking, why is this happening? What if I get the virus? What if I die? What is life for anyway? We're finding ourselves at home asking these kinds of questions, and I think this article provides really helpful answers to those questions. So what we know is that death comes for us all. So it is coming, of that we can be sure. And now I'm quoting the article. This is what Keller says. He says, all religions talk about death and the afterlife. But in general, they proclaim that you must lead a good life in order to be ready for eternity. Yet as death approaches, we all know that we have not done even close to our best. We have not lived as we ought. And so we stay with warrant, enslaved by the fear of death until the end. But Christianity is different. It doesn't leave you to face death on your own by holding up your life record and hoping that it will suffice. Instead, it gives you a champion who has defeated death, who pardons you and covers you with his love. You face death in him and in his perfect record. To the degree that we believe, know, and embrace that, we are released from the power of death.
That's so good.
The Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 55, he says, "Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting?" And so Keller goes on to say, Paul is not facing death stoically. He's taunting death. He's saying, how can anyone in his right mind look at humanity's most powerful enemy and taunt it? Like, what gives Paul the right to taunt death? He immediately gives the answer. He says, the sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, he gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Paul says that the sting of death is our conscience, our sense of sin and judgment before the moral law. But Christ has taken it away. Or more accurately, he's taken it upon himself for all who believe. So this is our hope, friends. This is the reason that we gather every Sunday. This is the truth that we'll highlight and celebrate on Easter. And this is what the world needs to hear right now. Yes, we need the information on how to be wise and how to be safe during this time. And it's not wrong to watch the news. It's not wrong to stay up to date with the latest stats. So I'm not advocating that you bury your head in the sand or you stop up your ears and refuse to come to grips with reality. But what I'm saying is, look reality in the face. See the global pandemic that is unfolding around us, and then make wise choices to care for your families and neighbors. And remember that death does not get the final word.
Yeah.
Remember that God is still on his throne. Remember that he has a good and perfect plan for your life. And share that good news with all who haven't yet believed it. Invite your non-Christian friends to join us for our live stream gatherings. Model a non-anxious presence for those in your life who are freaked out. Be quick to point yourself and others to the comforting truth of God's word. Death does not get the final word. Jesus does.
Yeah.
And that's what we all need to hear right now. So if I can get an amen in the comments, then we will move on.
Amen.
Yeah, all right. There we go. So yeah, I hope that article encourages you during this time, and if you see anything else that you like from it, or any quotes that you pulled out, share those with us in the comments as well. Okay, that is quite enough from me. Let's get into our discussion with y'all about caring for singles. Faith, tell us what prompted y'all coming on the show, and then what we're hoping to get out of this conversation.
Yeah, well, I mean, something you and Jim and the other elders have been talking about is like what opportunities do we have right now in this time. And so Haley and I both really wanted to talk about just a time that we can acknowledge single people and how this is affecting them specifically and differently. And, you know, it's in no way meant to condemn married people.
Right.
We love our married friends and want them to have healthy marriages, but it looks a little differently for us. So we wanted to have some time to talk about that. Wins would be just to, like, educate married people how they can care for the single people around them, and then to acknowledge single people.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's been a lot of conversation around just like the different people groups, how this affects the vulnerable, how this affects families, all of that, and just singles are part of that too. Singles are a people group that I think we should just acknowledge and address. And there should be awareness around what this looks like for them and how we care for them. So I think that would be the win.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm here for it.
Sweet.
Do you mind leading out with vulnerability and just telling us about your experience as a single woman and what it's been like, and just help us learn.
For sure. Yeah, this feels super vulnerable and hard to talk about because I think what I've been processing over the last 3 weeks since all this has been going on is a neediness in me has been exposed, because I think this like unmet desire of marriage has been on full display for me. And so any unmet desire, when you talk about it, you're in a place of neediness, which to me feels like weakness. And so it feels like hard to talk about and engage. But so I think for me, my experience as a single woman in the midst of Corona has been what I just said, like this idol of marriage being put on full display for me. I don't think coronavirus created that idol, but I think it has maybe heightened it or made it more apparent to me. And so I feel like my experience has been a lot of believing the lie that like if I just had that one person, then I wouldn't have to fight for relational intimacy as hard in a season of what feels like more isolation. And then also just like been kind of wrestling with the Lord of it feels like relational intimacy is being withheld from me in some ways. And so knowing that that's not true, but feeling the reality of that a little bit more in a season where we're being told to not engage with people in the same ways that we do typically. And so I think all of this has just created a heightened sense of fear of loneliness and isolation for me personally, and then just other single people that I know. It just looks differently. And so I think that has been probably the biggest thing in the last 3 weeks that has been apparent to me as social distancing has been encouraged. And then I think Faith will touch on this more a little later, but the conversation of like physical touch has been really interesting too, because really as single people, we're being told we have no safe people to even like hug, high five, touch at all. And so I think I've taken physical touch for granted a lot before. Simple things like hugs and whatnot feel unsafe. And so that affects people in different ways for sure, but it's affected me more than I would have anticipated it to. And so, that's my experience.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was thinking of Carter English, who watched last week and left us that question, but he mentioned at church one time that one of his favorite parts about coming is the line of staff people along the back row, and how he gets a hug from each of them every time he comes in. And that is definitely something that we're missing in our, our hi-bo, hey-bo inside joke there. But
I was like, no one's going to get that.
Right. I appreciate you sharing that. And Faith, I know your experience has been a little different, so tell
we
us about
wanted
that.
to talk about some of the differences just because single people aren't all the same. And so we've had
You aren't?
No. We actually have like different things going on.
No way. Okay.
Are you not going to talk about the fun part of this for you though? You just skipped over it.
Oh, I did skip over it.
This is a very important tip for our single listeners.
So one thing I did last week is I bought rollerblades. And I've been just blading around my neighborhood, like showing up in people's front yards and forcing them to talk to me and hang out with me.
Like mine, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
like James's.
Yeah.
So
I was like, I was out on the front porch and I was like, I think that was Haley, but she was just gliding. Like I couldn't see the blades. I was like, how is she just gliding along? And I'm like, oh,
Angel.
right. Yeah, she got her blades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you're feeling lonely, people should buy blades.
Get some blades.
Yeah, get some
Get some
blades.
Here,
I
here.
just think that's an important note to take away.
Yes.
I did skip over
You
that.
know,
Yes.
if you don't get anything else out of this, make sure you buy some rollerblades. Anyway, back to I might have been avoiding vulnerability just a little bit there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
So different from Haley, I live alone. Love being single most of the time. I'm not thinking about myself in the context of dating or marriage. And so that is like, it's normal for me to like be home alone in a lot of ways. I'm a type 8 though, so I don't like people telling me that I have to be. But unfortunately, right, like days before all this happened, I like received some really hard news with my personal health. I've been chronically ill for those of you who don't know me for most of my life. And so I was in a place of just really needing community and just being really needy. And so it's been really difficult for me to be in a vulnerable place and processing my personal needs while the world has been really noisy about what I should need,
Yeah.
especially as a immune compromised person.
Sure.
So that's been confusing. And historically, illness has been a thing for me that has led me to believe like people are afraid to touch me, or it's just been something that I've struggled with my whole life. And so being in a place where I'm processing trauma, processing new chronic illness, and then being in a legitimate scenario where people are actually afraid to touch me
Yeah.
and like lies that I've worked to disarm are like actually truthful in a way right now. So it's been confusing, and it's been hard as a single person specifically how families are allowed to be together.
Yeah.
But as a single person who lives alone, I'm expected to be completely isolated. And so I know it's unhealthy for me to be alone in my apartment right now all the time, 24/7. But a lot of the world is saying it's unhealthy for me to be with anyone. And so that's just been really confusing. And a lot of my close family aren't blood related. And so I want to be with them. And thankfully, like I have been at one or two houses of people that I consider family and have had some safe places, and they've cared for me really well. But yeah.
I remember that was something that that Dr. Seals at the Paradox talked about maybe a couple weeks ago with this. He said, go ahead and pick a family or two, no matter who you are, that is kind of going to be your safe people during the next 2 months.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one good strategy, but we're not getting into strategies just yet. First, we want to talk about, so these are two experiences of single people in our church. And again, I appreciate y'all sharing.
Thank you. Yeah.
I know that's admitting our need is tough, even though, we feel free to sing about it on Sundays. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Right.
Yeah.
But then getting in front
Naming
of a
them.
microphone.
Yeah.
Yep, and saying,
Specific.
here's how I need you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you think are some of the other things that people are experiencing as singles in our church?
Yeah. Haley, you want to take that?
Yeah, I think that there are like a variety, and I'm sure I won't touch on all of them now, but I think loneliness and isolation can definitely be one, especially depending on living situation, where you live, what neighborhood, if you have roommates, if you don't.
Yep.
I think that physical touch, what we talked about, is a different component. I think that even like we've talked a lot about how for anyone, not just singles, that when you have a lot of time alone and a lot of time in your head, a lot of like past sin patterns can come up.
Sure.
And so
Yeah.
I think that something that's maybe not specific to singles, but definitely apparent would be like sexual sin. What does that look like in a lot of time alone and being isolated and maybe having these desires that feel unmet, and that there's like a new wave of grief happening with that. I think that can be something that people are struggling with.
Yep.
I also think cynicism and resentment, whether that be towards marriage or married people or just in general, I feel like in discontentment, that breeds a lot of cynicism and resentment
Yeah.
towards truly anything. So I think that could be something that people are.
Yeah.
And then I think feeling forgotten or left behind, the enemy
Yeah.
could really be lying to people, making them feel unseen or unknown in this season.
And will you speak to that one? Because I know that you're bold in how you do not get forgotten or left behind, right? Like,
Yeah.
talk about inviting yourself over to people's house.
I mean, I think feeling left behind or forgotten is something that I felt a lot of my life. And
Sure.
so I think I just figured out, like, it can't all be put on other people.
Yeah.
Like, I can't just expect people to know what I need.
Uh-huh.
So I learned, like, if I need to be with people, I need to communicate that. And I
Yes.
need to tell them, you know, like, hey, I need to come over. I need to be in your
Right.
home. I need to, like, have dinner or whatever.
Yep.
And yeah, I think I tell single people this all the time. Many of you who are listening have probably heard me say this. I'm like, pick a family and invite yourself over. They probably don't know that you want to hang out with them.
Sure.
Like, we've talked to some married people on our staff, like, they don't assume that you want to come have dinner with them and their kids.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you
yeah.
have to, if you have that need, you just need to let somebody know.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, I think that's the push and pull of every relationship, right? Is you have to put yourself out there and you have to be pursued.
Yeah.
Right. And so often it can feel like, man, nobody's hitting me up. Nobody's thinking of me. Okay. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Now, if you're the one doing the initiating all the time, then there's an issue there.
Right.
But if you're doing no initiating,
Yeah.
it's
but
a
you're
little hard
mad
to
that no one's inviting
Yes.
you
Yeah.
over.
And I think there's a call to action for married people and single people in that. Like, married
Yep.
people should be texting, inviting, calling, and single people should be asking and accepting the invitation.
Yep.
And that can feel hard. Like,
Yeah.
the neediness piece is there too. To
Right.
express the need that you need that and to enter into that can be difficult. But
Yep.
I think there's a call to action on both sides there.
And I mean, that's such the beauty of the body of Christ is that it shouldn't be scary to admit our neediness.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we should all be aware of the fact that we are needy and comfortable and safe to let people know about that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I kind of cut you off in the middle
No,
of
love
that
it.
list. Anything else that you wanted to hit on there?
I like how you described me.
What did I say?
You don't let yourself be forgotten.
Right. Yeah. You're bold. Yeah. You're
that's
bold.
true.
Yes.
The last two that we had talked about were, I mean, we've used the word intimacy a lot here, but just, and like the access that single people have to healthy relational intimacy is limited right now
Yeah.
and can
Yeah.
be compromised. And so I think that that is a form of suffering. And then I think this affects people differently too, but financially right now, if people have lost their jobs, their hourly wages have been cut, things like that, they're single people don't have another income to
Sure.
possibly fall back on. And so I think that that doesn't just include people who aren't married or never married, but single moms too.
Yeah.
I think that there's like a variety of people who can be affected financially by this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. That's good. That's helpful. So give our married people, give our families. I know we've given a couple tips already,
Yeah.
but stuff that we haven't hit on this list yet.
Yeah. I mean, just even acknowledging that it might be different for people, for me, has been really helpful. People
Sure.
are like, what is it like for you? We've been talking a lot, preparing for this, about not asking assuming questions, either which way, not like, man, you must be really lonely, or you must be having the time of your life. Like, I hate being stuck at home with my kids, or whatever. Like,
Yes.
like neither extreme is helpful.
Yeah.
But
There-
just you as a person, like, how
Yes.
has this been for you?
There's such a grace in asking open-ended questions to people.
Yeah.
Yes.
EA and I
Yeah.
were talking about that the other day.
Yeah.
Just like, how are you is a really good question.
Yeah.
No assumptions, nothing underlying it. Just,
Yeah.
how you doing?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, it's that simple.
Yes.
So anyway, sorry, keep going.
No, you're good. And I told you this earlier, that it'd be really weird if I like called you to see how you were doing and
Yeah,
like only asked how EA and Ivy were doing and like didn't ask you about yourself at all.
Right.
And it'd also be really weird if I didn't mention them at all.
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
didn't acknowledge that they were a huge part of your life.
Right.
And so it's the same thing for singles. Singleness isn't our identity, so it shouldn't be the only thing you care about.
Yep.
But like, to not acknowledge it at all is also really weird. You know?
Yep.
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
think there's this tendency to either underemphasize singleness or overemphasize it. So it's like people's only identity or it doesn't exist at all.
Right.
Whereas like with anything, it's part of who we are, but
Part
it's
of the
not
whole.
the ultimate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
good.
For sure. What else? What else can families and married people be doing?
You can talk physical needs.
Oh, yeah. So I think there are some, we've talked a lot about the emotional and relational piece. I think there are some physical needs that look differently for single people during this time. So something that has been a big gift to me is I live with my brother and sister-in-law, and then I'm also
Right.
your neighbor. And
Right.
so being able to like share meals with people or just have help in grocery shopping when you're
Yeah.
stocking up for a long time. Things like that, people like coming home and food being available to me has just been a really big gift, especially in this season, because I feel like that combats the loneliness piece of like I have to care for myself all by myself in this season.
Yeah.
And so that's been a really big gift. And so, and then also I would say that, I mean, we mentioned this earlier that this could be a form of people suffering, but asking really intentionally if single people need financial help would be just a really practical, good question to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Good.
Yeah, I know that one of the families I've been quarantining myself with, that's what I call it. I've been quarantining myself with them. I think it was like 2 weeks ago. No, it's the Sheldons. Nicole cooked dinner for me like 3 times. And like after working all day, like sometimes I'm just like, I'm eating like junk when I get home because I do not have the energy to cook. So having like a home cooked meal from her was like so huge for me, you know?
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah. We have a question for you, James.
Oh, okay.
So
The interviewer becomes
Yeah.
the interviewee.
So we know, obviously we're friends with you.
Yes.
Haley spends a lot of time with you and your family, and we
Yeah.
know before you graced us with your presence here at the Paradox, I don't like to think about that time before you were here, but I know at one point it was a reality. You had a lot of singles in your home. You were friends with singles.
Yeah.
We are like super passionate about, we need married people,
Yeah.
and married people need single people.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about what your experience has been like
Sure.
having single people in your home, how it's blessed your family, what it's been like?
Absolutely. Yeah. EA and I, in Denver, where we moved from where we moved, so I don't end my sentence in a preposition. Was I even ending the sentence, though? I don't know. Anyway, in Denver, we were like the couple that did everything first. So we got married first. We bought a house first. We got a dog first. You know, we had a big boy job first. You know, all that kind of stuff. And so there was we got married and we had a bunch of single friends, right? And so what do? Well, I'll tell you that I didn't navigate that super well for the first 6 months or year of our marriage. I thought it was kind of like, yeah, I'm married now, but I can still hang with my boys whenever I want, you know? And so
Boys.
they were coming over a couple nights a week, you know, and we're staying up late. And our first apartment was tiny. It was 500 square feet. And there was not a door to the bedroom. So EA couldn't even like shut a door when she's going to bed.
No.
I know.
Sorry, EA.
I know. And we'd be up till, 11 or midnight playing video games some nights, playing Mario Kart and yelling. And, she sat me down and was like, hey, so you're married now,
What a gracious woman.
It kind of changes things a little bit. And so it took me a minute to figure that out. But as we had those conversations, what we learned is we don't want to be the married people who just don't see their friends anymore because we're married and they're single,
Yeah.
right? And so we had intentional conversations about groups of friends that we wanted to be in. So EA had a stronger desire than I did for married friends. But I said, okay, let's like have some married friends who are saying like, these are people in our group of friends. But then let's also have some single people in our life who we are checking in on, inviting over for dinner, maybe not staying until midnight playing video games. But these are these are some of our people, and that doesn't cease to exist because we're married now. So we had a friend of mine who basically lived on our couch for about 6 months. He was just in a hard place in life, and so he was over most nights, and we talked about that and said, yeah, let's go ahead and fill this gap for a little bit. We have another friend of mine who's still in Denver, who would come over to play video games with me. At this point, we had a bigger house. EA did have a door to the bedroom, so we were able to be downstairs. But he's just a sweet friend. He actually painted a picture of our dog before we left and surprised us with it. It was so sweet. We would have him over for dinner on Sunday nights sometimes. But we just knew that he was a guy that we needed to look out for, that we loved, and that needed like somebody in his corner who was just going to be hitting him up. Hey man, come over, come out, and so that's just and that's, I guess I'm going for a long time now, but I care about this. And so that's why I'm talking about it. That's a decision that married people have to make together, right? It can't be one person or the other. You've got to be on the same page and have a plan and then both live it out together.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, that's really good.
Cool. Anything else that you guys want to hit? I'm going to say real quick, Jordan, it doesn't look like we have any comments in this or questions in this doc. So if you haven't asked a question yet and you want to, now's your chance. We're going to be transitioning there soon. And if we don't have any questions, that's fine. We'll just wrap it up. But anything else?
We answered everything. Just kidding.
I guess y'all were so thorough and comprehensive. Yeah, we covered it all. But no, anything else that you guys wanted to add?
I mean, I would just say I know Haley and I aren't the only single people. We shared our experiences and they're different, but that doesn't mean that we covered everyone's experiences. So if there's something we didn't cover, let us know in the comments. Let us know how we can care for you.
Yep.
If there's something that we didn't mention that you're needing right now, like let us know so that we can help meet those needs, just like we're encouraging you earlier to speak your needs. We want to know what those are so that we can love you and care for you.
Yep.
So let us know, please.
Yes, let us know. Yeah, I think that even though we're joking that this was comprehensive because we don't have questions, it wasn't comprehensive. Like, this is the beginning of a conversation of what it looks like for married people and single people to like do life together and what that looks like in really healthy rhythms. And so I just think it's worth noting that it's the beginning of a conversation, and we desire for a lot more fruit to come from this in the future.
Yeah, I think when we talked about it, we even said, let's let this podcast be the catalyst or the jumping off point for more of these kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
So that would definitely be our hope.
I'll also say something we talked about yesterday that we didn't really hit on today is I know a lot of people have roommates, and so you may not be feeling like as lonely or isolated, but I really want to hit on how important it is to include people not in your life phase for married people too, like in your community. So if you're like, well, I have 3 roommates, we're all good, like we're fine because I'm not alone. I think it's really important to have families and people not your age, not doing the same thing you're doing in your corner, as you were saying. And it's true for married people too. Like we said earlier, we need each other, and there's a lot we have to offer each other. And so don't deprive yourself of that. Just want to encourage you guys to make sure you're including family in your diverse circle of friends.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And believing that single people have a lot to offer families. Like, I think single people disciple families in really impactful ways, just like married people disciple singles. And so I think that sometimes as a single, you can feel like you're only there to receive, but you're empowered by the Spirit too to disciple families in just as powerful ways. That's necessary. So, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Love it.
This is the star of Paradox Kids Live.
Yep.
Giving you all this knowledge too.
Yeah.
I mean,
do you want to help us get our wiggles out?
We're not going to get our wiggles out on this podcast. Not today. Okay, I don't see any questions. So if you have them, we'll check the post a little bit later, and we can hop on there on our personal. Oh, wait, producer Jordan.
Producer Jordan.
She's yelling from the other room. Let's see.
What is it?
What would be recommendations on how we can serve singles while maintaining the social distancing measures if we can't invite them over during this time? So, yeah, we talked about picking a couple families to be your quarantine families. But if you don't feel comfortable doing that, I mean, I think use Zoom, and cook dinner together on Zoom. Or maybe cook dinner and then go drop off a portion at their house, and then go back and call them on Zoom and eat the dinner that you made together.
Or even what Haley was talking about. I know it's not realistic for everyone. Like, I live in an apartment complex, but you live in a neighborhood and you were able to walk or rollerblade over and be in like a front yard of someone's house and get like face-to-face interaction. So if you're like, I don't feel comfortable having people in my home, there are other ways that you can potentially interact with them that's not actually them being in your home right now.
Yeah. And I think the last thing I'll say on that is the intentionality of how you're interacting with them. So whether it be face-to-face in a front yard or over Zoom or whatever, the depth that you're pursuing, I think, is like where the meat is, so to speak. Like, like you could have dinner and not really talk about anything significant, and not people, like a single person doesn't feel cared for by that. Or you can like Zoom and have like really intentional like conversation with open-ended questions, being like a safe place for those types of conversations, and then someone feels really cared for. So I think that like that's a huge difference maker in how you engage with single people.
And also just ask them. Like, Haley and I can give suggestions all day long, but if we're talking about how singles aren't the same, like asking the person what they need would be a really good place to start. Because they probably know what they need better than we do.
Sure. Yep. That's great. Okay. Joel asked, how have your rhythms changed during this time? Do you feel like your rhythms have changed much? I mean, other than, not seeing people as much.
Yeah, I feel like I'm working way more than I was before, which is a contrast of everyone else in the world right now.
Sure.
So it's been actually, I feel like, harder for me to have healthy, like, for lack of a better word, like self-care rhythms. So I've been trying to make sure I'm having to like schedule it and make sure that I'm like, okay, am I eating healthy food? Am I resting? Am I, reading my Bible? Like, all those normal rhythm things have actually been harder for me to fit in. But I don't think that's like the norm right now, because I think more people are like bored out of their minds. So what about you?
I think my relational rhythms have changed in the sense of like figuring out it's hard to stay connected with everybody that I would be in my everyday life, I think, just because that's like a lot of time on the phone and stuff. So I've been trying to figure out like who are the people in my corner in this season. And that just feels like a shift that I'm still, I think, like transitioning through of what that looks like, what that looks like in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Sure. Where you had like a wide relational network, you're having to kind of narrow in and go deeper with a couple people.
Yes.
Instead
It's,
of
it's hard at the end of the day when you've been like on a million Zoom calls, whether it's work or personal. Like,
sure.
even if you're needing people, sometimes it's hard to hop on another screen to have another conversation that way. So,
and that's something, when you were talking about the intentionality on the Zoom calls, I think that's great. I also think it's okay to just get on a Zoom call sometime and just kind of be folding your clothes.
yeah,
or,
that's true. That's what
know?
that's what we call it ourselves, girl gang. That's what we have talked about. It's just like, we just need to put some Maggie Rogers on, drink a glass of wine, and like laugh together because everything is so heavy and so hard right now. Like, we don't want to get on Zoom and just like talk about how hard things are for an hour. Like, we also need to just laugh together and see each other's faces and like be grounded in what's true, regardless of what's hard right now. And that has been like a super beneficial thing for me is like, let's not get into like the heavy stuff every time we're connecting. Let's also just take time to be friends.
Yep. Hear, hear. Okay.
Here.
Well, we're trying to keep these to around 30 minutes, so I will wrap us up. And if you have more questions, we can address those in the comments later. But as we close, I do want to point you there one more time because I asked Jordan to post a link to that 3-minute assessment that we sent out this morning in This Week at Paradox. That's from our friends at Glue, which that's a story for another podcast. But I used to,
yes, it is.
I used to work at Glue, and now they're making assessments that we use for this church.
So cool.
But they're also working with a group called Barna, which has done research for the church for 50, 60 years. And they are trying to provide the church with resources right now that give them a pulse on how their people are doing. And so since we can't be together and find out on Sundays or find out, in city groups throughout the week, well, we are on Zoom, but you know what I mean. This gives us an insight into how y'all are doing. And so the link to that is there. Last time I checked, maybe 25 or 30 of y'all had done it. And so we'd love for that number to be in the hundreds, just so we can get a representative sense of how everybody's doing and how we can serve you guys. So let us know, and that'll do it for this week's podcast. We'll be back next week, I think, with your brother and sister to talk about city renewal and welovefortworth.org and how we can serve and be served during this time. So thanks for joining us live or listening on the audio feed, and we'll see you next week, Wednesday at noon on the TPC podcast. Take care, and God bless.